All right, and we are live. Welcome back mga kaguro. And of course, this is Professional Education Final Coaching Part 4. Of course, this PowerPoint presentation will be shared with you right after this discussion. Okay, we start with question number 1. Dr. Goldberg does a study in which she observes Jerome, a child who has been identified as having a rare disorder. Jerome is the only subject in the study. Which type of research design is Dr. Goldberg using? Is it letter A, experiment, letter B, case study, letter C, survey study, or letter D, quasi-experiment? Okay, which one do you think is the correct choice for number 1? Okay, which one is your answer for number 1? All right, so iba-iba yung sagot natin. Karamihan yung sagot ninyo ay letter B. We will check if your answers are correct. All right, going back to question number 1. Okay, question number 1 po. Dr. Goldberg does a study in which he observes Jerome. Okay, Jerome has a rare disorder. And Jerome, of course, is the only subject in this study. There's no other subject. There's no sample, there's no population but Jerome. Okay. Now, which type of research design is he using? Is it letter A, experiment, letter B, case study, letter C, survey study, or letter D, quasi-experiment? The correct choice here is letter B, case study. Okay, letter B po ang ating choice, ang ating sagot. For question number 1, that's letter B, case study. Let's take a look at our slides. Now, generally, all types of research may be classified as cross-sectional research. This is research done just one time in a single session. Okay, so unang-una, we are going to compare and contrast cross-sectional versus longitudinal design. Okay, so unang-una, again, when you say cross-sectional research, this is a type of research, type of study that is done just one time in a single session. Okay, so cross-sectional. Now, the advantage of this, of course, is that it is easy. It is very cheap to do. But the disadvantage are those that, or one disadvantage is you cannot study how people change over a period of time dahil isang beses lang siya, no? Panandalian lamang siya, one-time study lamang. Now, the other term that we have here is longitudinal research. This is done over multiple sessions or over an extended period of time. Okay, so longer period, yung longitudinal. Different types of studies that we have here. First, you have your case study. A single person in a research study is studied. Okay, just like our example a while ago, si Jerome lamang yung kanyang subject, and so case study po yung ating sagot. No? There is only one single person or one person in a research study. Hence, we say case study. Okay, so case study po yun. Iisa lamang yung subject niya, no, sa research. A field study is one that you also call a naturalistic study. You observe the participants in their natural environments. Okay, so titingnan mo sila, i-observe mo sila, you study them in their natural environment. So usually yung mga research, yung mga immersion types of research mo, no, yung you would go to different societies, you would go to different areas in your community, and you try to study people in their natural environment. You'd call that field study. Okay, that's a field study type of research. You also have your survey study. As the name suggests, you just give a group of people a survey with lots of questions. Okay, this is very easy to do. So survey usually ginagamit natin. Okay, it is very easy. Now, you also have experiment. You create 2 or more groups of people to compare. Okay, so you have 2 or more people, 2 or more groups of people, and then you compare them. That's an experiment. And the last one that you have here is quasi-experiment. The groups were not created by the experimenter. Instead, the difference between those 2 groups have already occurred naturally. Say, if you are trying to study your class, and you divide this class into 2 groups. One will be your experimental group, the other one will be your control group. You'd call this type of study or this type of research as experiment because you have formed the 2 groups. In your quasi-experiment, the difference of this, when you compare this with your true experiment, your experimental design, is that yung quasi-experiment mo, you did not create the groups. the differences between these two groups were already there. They occurred naturally. Say you are comparing boys and girls. Okay? So, hindi mo inassign na itong individual na to, dito siya dapat sa group ng boys, dito siya dapat sa group ng girls. Naturally, dyan sa grupo na yan, yung individual na to because he is a boy or he or she is a girl. And so, quasi-experiment, you did not form the groups. Okay? Yan yung pagkakaiba niya sa experiment. And so, sa ating question kanina, yung ating choice was case study because it was only Jerome that was the subject, no? Isa lamang yung subject sa study mo. And so, we'd call the type of subjects, type of research, your case study. Okay, so letter B, case study po ang ating sagot. All right, number 2. Mr. Freeman randomly gives half of the children in his class an extra dessert over the lunch hour. The other half gets no dessert. After lunch, he tests the children's levels of resentment toward each other. Which type of research design is Mr. Freeman using? Is it letter A, case study, letter B, quasi-experiment, letter C, experiment, or letter D, longitudinal? Okay, I see a lot of letter C's in our chat box. All right, so sabi dito, si Mr. Freeman randomly, okay, hinati niya yung children in his class, okay? And half of this, he gave extra dessert, and the other half gets no dessert. And after lunch, he tests the children's level of resentment, okay? Yung hatred nila toward each other. Letter C, I see a lot of letter C's. And in this case here, the correct choice would be letter C. Okay, so letter C. So again, when you say case study, isa lamang yung subject nyo, no? Gaya ng number 1 natin kanina, si Jerome lamang yung ating subject. Longitudinal, this is the type of research that you do over a long period of time. Experiment mo, yung pagkakaiba ng experiment and quasi-experiment, yung experiment mo, you are the one who form your group. Your quasi-experiment, on the other hand, the differences between those two groups have occurred naturally. Nandiyan na siya, no? So, hindi ikaw yung nag-form ng group nila. The groups were formed based on their characteristics that occurred naturally. So, that's your quasi-experiment. So, over here, the correct choice is letter C. That's experiment. So, si Mr. Freeman mismo yung naggrupo sa kanyang klase. So, this group right here, ito yung aking bibigyan ng free dessert, the other one wala. Okay? So siya yung nag-form ng group, and so this is experiment, letter C. All right, number 3. Miss Tanaka wants to know how parenting style affects children's personalities. To complete her study, she observes children in their own homes, doing what they would naturally be doing anyway. Which type of research design is Miss Tanaka using? Is it letter A, quasi-experiment, letter B, field study, letter C, experiment, or letter D, case study? Ayun, very clear na yung mga types ng research. Okay, so alam nyo na, naintindihan nyo na yun. All right, what do you think is the correct choice for number 3? You have the hints there. Okay, na-discuss natin kanina, the different types of research. Okay, so for number 3 here, you have Miss Tanka, and she is trying to observe children in their own home. Okay, doing what they would, yung pinaka-hint mo dito is naturally. Okay, what they would be doing naturally and in their own homes. So that means you are observing your subjects in their natural setting, okay, in their natural setting. Hence, the term that we are looking for here is field study, okay? So, tama yung field study. Again, when you say case study, isa lamang yung inyong study, no, yung inyong subject. In this case here, children. So, hindi siya case study. Hindi din siya experiment dahil hindi niya ginrupo, hindi niya finorm yung groups, no? Miss Tanka did not form the different groups. Hindi din naman siya quasi-experiment because she was not comparing the two different groups with natural characteristics or natural tendencies, no? So this right here is field study. She was observing them in their own homes, doing what they would naturally be doing. Okay, so letter B po ang ating choice dito. Okay, so letter B, yung ating choice dito, field study. when you are observing your subjects in their natural setting. Okay, so letter B is the correct choice. Okay, now next one. Dr. Yang does a study in which she observes 100 children over a period of 6 years, noting changes over time. Which type of research design is Dr. Yang using? Is it letter A, experiment, letter B, field study, letter C, quasi-experiment, or letter D, longitudinal? Letter D, I see a lot of letter Ds. Okay, letter D. Karamihang choice ninyo ay letter D. All right, and the correct choice, of course, here would be letter D. As we have mentioned, when you say cross-sectional, one-time study lamang siya. Pero yung letter D nyo, longitudinal, from the term itself, long, it takes long period of time. Okay, so this is a type of research that is done over a period of time. Okay, so a period of 6 years. Tama yan, Sir Mark. Okay, so sabi dito, over a period of 6 years. So matagal niyang pinag-aralan, no? Matagal niyang pinag-aralan yung kids. And so this is longitudinal research. Okay, longitudinal type of research. Number 5, Miss Olsen decides to study differences in her classroom between children who have an identified learning disability and children who do not. Which type of research design is Ms. Olsen using? Is it letter A, case study, letter B, cross-sectional, letter C, experiment, or letter D, quasi-experiment? Okay. Which one do you think is the best choice for number 5? Maraming salamat, Sir Jonathan Cortez, for the positive feedback. Thank you, Ma'am Meg, for fresh questions and concepts. Okay, number 5, Miss Olsen decides to study differences in her classroom between children who have an identified learning disability. Okay, so identified learning disability and children who do not. Okay, so Miss Olsen here is studying the kids who have learning disabilities and children who do not. Okay. Now, ang question, si Miss Olsen ba yung gumawa ng grupo niya? Si Miss Olsen ba yung nagsabi na dito ka dapat? Or si Miss Olsen ba yung nag-study na dito ka dahil wala kang learning disability, dito ka dahil meron kang learning disability? Yung pagkakaroon ba ng learning disability occurred naturally? Or ginawa lang ba yun ni Miss Olsen para magkaroon siya ng dalawang grupo niya? Okay, and so the correct choice here should be letter D. Letter D po yung ating sagot dito, no? Quasi-experiment, dahil yung grouping niya is based on the learning disability. And this happened or this occurred naturally. Naturally siya, no? So hindi niya finorm yung grupo niya na siya lang yung nag-randomly choose ng kanyang subjects in each group. Pero meron ng pagkakaiba yung dalawang grupo niya. They happen naturally, hindi gawa ni Miss Olsen. And so this is letter D, quasi-experiment. So quasi po yan, pag yung difference between the two groups happen naturally and they've already existed prior to the study. Andyan na, no? Prior to the study, meron na silang pagkakaiba. Merong may disability, merong walang disability. So letter D po ang ating hinahanap dito, quasi-experiment po ang ating hinahanap. Okay? So hindi siya case study dahil marami yung kanyang pinag-aaralan. Hindi siya cross-sectional, although there is no time given, no? Baka mahaba din naman yung study niya. Experiment, again, we know the difference between experiment and quasi-experiment. Quasi po, pag yung differences happen naturally. They occurred naturally. Okay, so quasi-experiment, yung ating hinahanap dito, letter D. Number 6, Dr. Patel does an experiment in which she shows a people either a happy movie, a sad movie, or no movie in a classroom. Then she asks them to fill out a survey assessing their feelings about whether they want to adopt a pet from the animal shelter. In this experiment, what is the independent variable? Is it letter A, the type of movie viewed? Letter B, the classroom location? Letter C, the feelings about pet adoption? Or letter D, the participants? Which one is the best choice for number 6? We are looking for our independent variable, okay? So we're looking for our independent variable here. So again, meron tayong si Dr. Patel, and she did a study, okay? She showed people different, or she has 3 different groups of people. So yung isang grupo, pinanood niya ng happy movie, the other one, pinanood niya ng sad movie, and the last one, walang movie at all, okay? And then at the end, she asked them to fill out a survey assessing their feelings about whether they want to adopt a pet or not. Okay, so what then is our independent variable in this type of study? The correct choice, of course, would be letter A, the type of movie viewed. Okay, so letter A po, the type of movie viewed. Yung ating hinahanap nito, hindi po classroom location, no? Hindi din po feelings about pet adoption. This is already the dependent variable at hindi din yung ating participants. Now, bakit type of movie viewed yung ating independent variable? Ano ang difference between independent and dependent variable? Okay, now, whenever you have your hypothesis in your research design, you have your null hypothesis, you have your alternate or alternative hypothesis. Say your sample hypothesis here is when students in school consume caffeine, their performances on tests are affected. It might be that their test scores would increase or their test scores would decrease. Okay? Pero apektado yung kanilang performance sa test kapag umiinom sila ng kape. Okay? So that's your hypothesis. Now, in this type of hypothesis, you can actually see your independent variable and your dependent variable. Ito yung hinahanap natin. No? Sa science, sa biosci, sa physi, lumalabas din ito. Maaring lumabas din ito sa inyong gen ed. Okay, so you have your independent variable and your dependent variable. Your independent variable is your cause. Okay, so this is the cause of a certain effect. So yung cause mo, in your hypothesis, that's what you call your independent variable. In this case, in our example a while ago, your cause is the caffeine. Okay, so when they take when they're drinking coffee, their test scores are going to be affected. Okay, so yung cause mo, na ang cause ng pagbabago dito would be the coffee, okay, caffeine. Now, your independent variable is also called your manipulated variable because usually if you are having your experiment, your independent variable is that part of your experiment na binago mo, manipulate mo bilang experimenter, no? So you use different types of this, different kinds of this, different brands, or you may use different amounts of something, okay? Pag meron kang binago, meron kang change na amount, type, brand, kinds, then you'd know that that will be your independent variable. Na pag-aralan natin to high school pa lamang, paulit-ulit, no? Parte siya ng inyong scientific method, di ba? Pag hindi nga high school, parang elementary pa lang. Usually, yung first lesson sa inyong science class would be the scientific method. At parte ito ng inyong scientific method, different types of variable. Okay, so yung independent variable mo, again, that's the cause. Now, your dependent variable, this is the effect, okay? Or from the term itself, it says dependent variable. So, nakadepende siya sa inyong independent variable. Siya yung epekto ng iyong independent variable, okay? Siya yung effect ng inyong independent variable. So, in our example a while ago, it is the test performance of the student. You remember our hypothesis. If the students are taking caffeine, then their test performance will be affected. Okay, so yung caffeine mo is the cause, hence it is your independent variable, and your dependent variable, the effect, is the test performance. Now, your dependent variable is that part of your experiment that you are measuring. Siya yung mini-measure mo, no? Siya yung mini-measure mo. And so, these are the two major types of variables. Meron pa tayong pangatlong klase ng variable, no? Sa science subjects natin lumalabas ito. Yung yung other type of variable ninyo would be your control variable or your constant. Okay, control or constant variables. Ito yung parte ng inyong experiment that you do not manipulate, that you do not change. So dapat parehas lang siya. For example, in this type of experiment, dapat parehas yung grade level ng inyong estudyante, dapat parehas yung test na binigay mo sa iyong estudyante, dapat parehas yung environment na binigay mo sa kung saan mo nilagay yung inyong estudyante, dapat parehas yung pag-review mo, for example, sa inyong estudyante. Because in an experiment, if you'd want your experiment to be valid, if you'd want your experiment to be reliable, you should only have one independent variable. Okay? So dapat isa lamang independent variable mo. The rest of the parts of your experiment should be kept constant, aside from your independent and, of course, the dependent variable, which is the effect of your independent variable. Say your experiment, say ako ay isang mag-e-experiment ako, no? At meron akong dalawang setups, okay? So, meron akong dalawang groups. I would want to find out the effects of different amounts of water in the height of my tomato plants. Okay, so say meron akong dalawang grupo or tatlong grupo, for example. One group would receive 100 ml of water every day. Okay, the other group would receive 50. Okay, only 50 ml of water every day. Now the last group would receive 200 ml of water every day. Okay, so I am trying to test the effect of different amounts of water in the growth of my tomato plants, or to the growth of my tomato plants. Now, question, what is our independent variable in that type of experiment? Okay, what's your independent variable in the example that I have just told you a while ago? What's your independent variable? So again, I have 3 setups. Yung isang group ko ay didiligan ko ng 100 ml of water every day. The other group, I would be using 50 ml of water every day. And the last group, I will be using 200 ml of water every day. Okay, which is my independent variable. All right, now remember, your independent variable is the one that you manipulate. This is the cause. I have told you, this is the part that you are using different types of, amounts of, kinds of, brands of. Okay, hence, tama po yan. Yung ating pong independent variable is your amount of water. Okay, amount of water po yung ating independent, independent. Again, minamanipulate mo siya, ginagamitan mo ng ibang amount, yung ibang type, ibang kind, ibang brands. Okay, so that would be your amount of water. Amount of water po yung ating independent variable. Now, in that type of experiment, what is our dependent variable? Ano po yung ating dependent variable? Moving on to our dependent variable, what do you think should be our dependent variable? Ano yung dependent variable mo in that experiment? Remember, your dependent variable is the effect of your independent variable. Dependent variable. All right, tama po yan. The growth of your plants. Okay, that would be the effect of the different amount of water that you will be using. So the height of your plants or the growth of your plants, that would be your dependent variable. Okay, so tama yan. Dependent variable mo would be the height of plants. Now, next question, what are some of our control variables? Ano yung mga control variables natin, constant variables natin in this type of experiment? What are some examples of our constant or control variables in this type of experiment? Sa experiment na yon, ano yung magiging control variables natin or constant variables natin? Oh, iba-iba na yung sagot nyo. Water, soil, growth of plants, amount of sunlight, plants. Okay, control variables or pale. May nagsabi pa ng pale si Ma'am Heidi. Fruits of labor. Iba din si Sir Ruel Abeliar. Ayon, hindi po pwede, hindi po pwede na amount of water yung inyong control variables. Hindi po pwedeng maging amount of water yung isa sa mga control variables mo. Dahil remember, yung amount of water is your independent variable. So hindi na siya po pwedeng maging bahagi ng inyong control. Hindi din po pwedeng maging growth of plants. Because remember, your growth of plants That was your dependent variable. Okay? So yung dalawang ito, hindi na siya po pwedeng maging parte ng inyong control variables or your constant. Yung control variables mo would be the rest of the factors. Kunwari, yung soil type, dapat parehas. Yung age ng plant, nung ikaw ay nagsimula sa experiment mo, dapat parehas. Yung amount of sunlight, dapat parehas. Yung environment, including the temperature, dapat parehas. Yung ano pa bang dapat parehas sa inyong yung species, okay? Even the species of your tomato plant dapat parehas para pag naging successful no yung inyong experiment, meron talagang differences between the growth of the plants. You can pinpoint. Masasabi mo na the difference is really because of the different amounts of water that I have used. It's not because of the soil type. It's not because of the temperature. It's not because of the amount of sunlight dahil pare-parehas lamang yung ibang variables na to. As I have mentioned, so that your experiment may be valid or may be effective, dapat isa lamang yung independent variable mo, okay? So again, yung control natin, control variables, po pwedeng sunlight, soil, the age of the plant, po pwedeng ganyan, temperature, po pwedeng ganyan, okay? So yung independent variable mo again is the amount of water. Your dependent variable would be the growth of your tomato plants, okay? Now we move on to the next question. Number 7, Dr. Marion wants to conduct an experiment that involves the distribution of a questionnaire. She has only enough copies for half of the students. She decides who will participate by pulling names out of a hat and choosing 10 students from each of the 4 grades in the school. What constitutes the sample in this experiment? Is it letter A, only the first 10 students she chooses? Letter B, the students who are not chosen to participate? Letter C, only the students who actually participate? Or letter D, all of the students in the school? Okay, ano kaya ang inyong choice for number 7? Okay, so 7, samut-sari din, no? Wala lang nag-choose ng letter B, pero samut-sari ang inyong sagot. Maraming letter A. May letter C, marami din. May iilang letter D. At yung letter B ay walang nag-choose. Okay, so again, meron kang si Dr. Marion, and she wants to conduct an experiment involving distribution of questionnaire. So kukonti lamang yung copy niya, no, ang photocopy ng questionnaire ni Dr. Marion, kukonti lamang. So she decides who will participate by pulling names out of a hat, and she will be choosing 10 students from each of the 4 grades in the school. 10 students from each of the 4 grades. So what will be the total number of students that she will be using in her experiment? If she will be using 10 students for every grade, for all of the 4 grades in the school, ilan lahat yung estudyanteng sasagot ng kanyang survey? Ang talino ni Cap, 40 students. Okay? So 40 students lahat ng kanyang pipiliin, no? So 10 students sa kada grade level, meron siyang 4 na grades, and so 40 students lahat. Okay? So 10 times 4 equals 40. Tama yan. Okay? Now, ang question is, what constitutes the sample in this experiment? Ano yung sample sa experiment na ito? Is it letter A, only the first 10 students she chooses? Letter B, the students who are not chosen to participate? Letter C, only the students who actually participate? Okay, or letter D, all of the students in the school? The correct choice there would be letter C. Okay, letter C. You cannot say letter A because sabi ng letter A, only the first 10 students she chooses. Remember, she has a total of 40 students who will be answering the questionnaire. Okay, so total of 40 students, sabi nyo, di ba? 10 times 4. So total of 40 students. Okay, so you cannot choose letter A. Letter C po yung ating sagot dito. Your sample would be the students who actually participate. Okay, so kung sino yung nag-participate, yan po yung inyong sample. Yung sample mo should include only those people who participate in your survey, who participate in your experiment. Okay, so klaro na po ba tayo? Letter C po. Letter C po yung ating sagot. Okay na po tayo sa letter C. Awit, pero move on. Hindi po letter A ha, kasi sabi ng letter A, first 10 students lamang, 40 po lahat yung nag-answer ng ating questionnaire. So we have to account for everyone who has answered the questionnaire. Lahat na nag-answer ng questionnaire, lahat na nag-participate, lahat yon ay kasama ng ating sample. Okay, so letter C po ang ating choice for number 7. Move on. Parang galit, Sir Nino Parang bitter. Okay, now, whenever you have your experiment, okay, whenever you are doing your experiment, you all had your thesis, okay, your understudy thesis. Thesis, not thesis, okay? Hindi po thesis, pero thesis. Now, it is very important that you assign your subjects randomly. Okay, random po yung pag-a-assign dapat ng inyong estudyante, no, yung inyong study, yung inyong sample. Each person in the study should have an equal chance of being in either the control group or the experimental group. So dapat may random assignment kayo whenever you have your research. Now, you have the first term here, which is your population. Pag sinabi mong population, this is the entire group of people you're interested in. So in the case of si Dr. kanina, pag sinabi mong population, ano yung sagot natin? Kung population hinahanap natin, ano yung magiging sagot natin? Okay. Iba na naman. Nalito na naman kayo. 40 yung sagot niyo yung nag-participate sa experiment. Sabi ng iba. Okay, if we are looking for the population, entire group of people, lahat ng tao, okay? So lahat ng tao. Kung if we are looking for the population, entire group of people yon, so yung magiging sagot nyo would be letter D, all of the students in that school, okay? All of the students in that school. Remember, the school has 4 grades, okay? 4 na grades yung school na yon. All of the students in that school would be part of your population. So all the students, lahat ng students, hindi lamang yung nag-participate, klaruhin ko lang po, hindi lamang yung nag-participate. Yung population mo would include those who participated and those who did not. So the entire group, that's your population. So all the students in that school would be part of your population. Okay, so lahat ng students in that school would be part of your population. Hindi lamang yung na-select mong students, hindi lamang yung nag-answer, hindi lamang yung nag-participate. Now, the next term that we have here is the sample. This is a group of people who actually participated in that study. Okay, so sa ating tanong, yung ating sagot doon was those students who actually answered the questionnaire. So kung sino yung nag-participate, that's the sample. So ibig sabihin, no, yung sample mo, those people who participated in your experiment, parte siya ng inyong population. Okay? So, parte siya ng population mo. Yung population mo, lahat ng estudyante sa school na to. Pero yung sample mo, yun lamang nag-participate sa inyong experiment. Okay? So, yung sample mo is just part of your population. Okay? Parte siya ng inyong population. Now, we have the different types of sampling method. You have this in your thesis. The first one, it would be your convenience sample. You are using people who are readily available and are willing to participate. So say, sasabihin mo, meron akong survey, please answer. Sinong gusto mag-answer? So, yung kuya mo, yung ate mo, yung pamangkin mo, pina-answer mo. Yung kapitbahay mo, yung best friend mo, yung boyfriend mo, pina-answer mo. Kung sino lamang yung willing mag-participate at kung sino lamang yung pinakamalapit, pinakamadali, pinakamabilis puntahan, that's convenience sampling. Okay, so convenience sampling po yan. Okay, so that's your convenience sampling. Now, if you are talking about clustered sample or clustered sampling, you have a specific type of convenience sample that's based on a particular geographic area. So naka-clustered yung inyong sample. It is a very specific type of convenience sampling. So say you are using clustered sampling, no? Meron kang iba't ibang samples, pupunta ka, magpapasurvey ka sa 7-Eleven, magpapa-survey ka sa burger machine, magpapa-survey ka sa Angel's Burger ba yun? Angel's Burger, no? So clustered sample, specific type of convenience sample that's based on a particular area, particular geographic area. That's clustered sampling. You also have random sample, okay? Random sampling method. Now, every person in the larger population has an equal chance of being in the sample. Usually, yung ginagamit natin sa random sampling would be draw lots. Okay? So, i-draw lots mo. Lahat ng inyong member ng population andyan, and then you will be getting your sample, i-draw lots mo. So, all of the members of your population would have an equal chance of being chosen. That's your random sampling. You also have your stratified random sample or stratified random sampling. You identify variables like this in advance that you want to make sure are covered by your sample. So say you have, say sa experiment na ito ni Doktor, no? Ni Doktor, yung remember yung ginamit niya was convenience sampling. Convenience sampling lamang yung ginamit niya. But we can actually also classify this as stratified random sample. Okay? Pwede din naman siyang stratified random sampling dahil lahat ng members ng each group or each class ay merong representative. Okay? But we have to remember that this should be random. Lahat dapat ng pangalan ng, say, first group and second group, third group, and fourth group niya. Tapos nag-draw lot siya ng 10 in this group, drawlets din ng 10, drawlets din ng 10 for the rest of all the groups. Tapos random yung pag-drawlets niya, that will be stratified random sample. So these are the different sampling methods that we can use whenever we have our research. All right, number 8, a school principal wants to conduct an experiment that involves a distribution of a questionnaire. Ayan, questionnaire na naman. She has only enough copies for half of the students. She decides who will participate by pulling names out of a hat and choosing 10 students from each of the 4 grades in the school. What constitutes the population of this experiment? Letter A, the students who are not chosen to participate. Letter B, only the students who actually participate. Letter C, only the first 10 students she chooses. Or letter D, all of the students in the school. Okay, which one is the correct choice for number 8? Okay, I see B's and D's. B na to. Aha. May mga nag-change na ng answer. Again, remember, kids, ladies and gentlemen, mga kaguro, basahing maigi. Minsan alam nyo na kung ano yung difference, namamali pa yung sagot niyo dahil hindi kayo nagbabasa. Ako pala yung nagbabasa, no? Nagbabasa din ako. Hindi nyo tinitingnan kung ano nakasulat sa inyong question. Okay? So sabi dito, it's almost the same. Tapos sabi nyo, B na to. Siguradong sigurado pa kayo. B na, ha? Ayan, basa-basa kasi, sabi. Okay. Now, sabi dito, what constitutes the population? We have just talked about your population. Okay, population. Remember, we said the sample is just part of your population. Okay? Ayan, di po. Ay, di po pala. Kaparehas, sabi ni Sir. Sino to si Sir? Facebook user lang nakalagay. May kaparehas po yata yung tanong. Hindi po sila magkaparehas. Halos magkaparehas. Pero sabi ni Let, lilituhin kanya, no? So, iisa lamang yung word na papalitan, mali na yung sagot mo. Iba na yung sagot. So, dapat hinihimay mo yung question. Hinihimay mo, tinitingnan maigi yung question, no? Pag may namali lamang, may na-change na word dyan, iba na ang magiging sagot. O sabi dito, what constitutes the population? Population pong hinahanap. Okay, population na po yung hinahanap, hindi po sample. And so the correct choice here would be letter D, all of the students in that school. Okay? Aba, ayun, may paghuhugot. Siya nga, nilito ako, let pa kaya. So, sabi kanina, oh, madaling-madali to. Nakita ko na yung tanong na to. Parehas lang. Letter B na to. Okay? Na-stress na kasi mahaba ang question, Sir Nino. Okay, the correct choice here would be all of the students in the school because we are looking for the population. If it's just your sample, it would be the students who actually participate. Okay, so i-break down yung question. Tama yan, Kap, no? Tingnan maigi yung question. Lahat, tingnan, basahing maigi. Akala mo siya na, pero hindi pa pala siya. No? Parang pag-ibig lang yan. Akala mo sigurado ka ng siya na talaga, pero hindi pa pala. Okay? So, akala mo tama ka na sa choice mo, hindi pa pala. So, basahing maigi. Okay? Basahing maigi. All right, we move on. Number 9, move on. Dr. Patel does an experiment in which she shows people either a happy movie, a sad movie, or no movie in a classroom. Then she asks them to fill out a survey assessing their feelings about whether they want to adopt a pet from the animal shelter. In this experiment, what was the control group? Okay, yung tanong natin dito, what was the control group? Is it letter A, the people who watched no movie? Letter B, the group of pets who are currently in the animal shelter? Letter C, the people who watched the happy movie? Or letter D, the larger population of people who live in that town? Okay, letter A. Karamihang sagot ay letter A. All right, I see a lot of letter A's in our chat box. Oh, may nagpalit pa from D to A. Okay, going back to the question that you have here, si Dr. Patel nagbabalik, no? So, meron siyang tatlong groups again, happy movie, sad movie, no movie. And then may survey siya pagkatapos. Pagkatapos nilang manood ng movies, pero yung isa, of course, yung the other group had no movie at all, she assessed, okay? She assessed their feelings on how or whether they'd want to adopt a pet, okay, by answering a survey. In this experiment, what was the control group? Okay, control group, okay, yung hinahanap natin control group, and the correct choice here would be letter A. A po yung tama, the people who watch no movie at all. Now, klaruhin ko lamang, ano nga pa yung control group? Yon, sabi ni Ma'am Charmaine Yu, naalala ko ito, sinabi ni Ma'am Mek, control group yung wala kang ginawa sa kanila. Tama po yan. Okay, so whenever you have your experiment, you have your experimental group at meron ka ding control group. Yung experimental group mo, ito talaga yung ginagamit mo for your experiment. Okay, so say sa ating example kanina about tomato plants, maaring yung inyong experimental group ay yung ginamitan mo ng 50 ml of water and 200 ml of water. Maaring yung control group mo, this group is the group that is under normal condition. Nasa normal condition lamang sila. Hindi mo sila ginawa ng kung anong treatment. Wala kang ginawa sa kanila, no? So sa ating tomato plants, pwede din naman gawin mong control group mo yung 100 ml of water lang. Kung usually, yung ginagamit mo sa pagdidilig mo ay 100 ml of water talaga. Pwede din naman na lahat ng tatlong ito ay sa inyong experiment, for example, meron kang tatlong grupo, pwedeng lahat ng grupo na yon ay gawin mong experimental group. Okay? Pero sa isang experiment, dapat meron ka talagang control group. Meron kang control group. Kahit wala kang ginagawa sa grupo na to, in your control group, dapat meron ka talang control group sa inyong experiment because your control group, yung pinaka-function ng control group mo is as basis for comparison. Iko-compare mo siya, no? Basis siya ng inyong comparison later para ma-check mo kung naging effective yung study mo, para ma-check mo kung meron ang difference between your control group and your experimental group. So again, yung control group mo, ito yung wala kang ginawa sa kanila. Okay? Wala kang ginawa sa kanila. Tama yan. Okay, and so the correct choice here would be the people who watch no movie. Wala silang pinanood na movie, no? Meron kang two other experimental groups, happy movie or sad movie. Ang third group mo ay walang pinanood na movie. Ito yung inyong control group. Okay? So yung pinaka-purpose niya, although you would say na wala silang independent variable, no? Pero yung pinaka-purpose ng control group mo, bakit tayo may control group, it is as basis for comparison. Okay? Basis for comparison siya. Okay? Ayun. Yung wala kang ginawa sa research nyo as a group, pero kasali ka sa graduation. So, control group yon. Okay, so letter A po for number 9. We move on. Number 10, if a research study is so specific and strange that it does not have any real-world application, we can say that the study has a low level of letter A, internal validity, letter B, external validity, letter C, reliability, or letter D, ecological validity. Okay, what's your answer for number 10? Ayan, nakakalito na naman to, no? Nalilito, nahihilo. If a research study is so specific, it is very specific, and it is so strange, it does not have any real-world application, we can say that the study has a low level of, now remember your reliability in research, parehas lang naman yung meaning ng reliability as with your education, no? Yung reliability mo sa assessment. So, sa assessment mo sa education, reliability is the consistency of scores, okay? Consistency of scores. Now, in research, we have 3 different types of validity. In this case right here, if the research study is so specific and strange, it does not have any real-world application, the correct choice is letter D, ecological validity po yung ating hinahanap, okay? It is one type of validity, it is ecological validity. Okay? Ito po yung aking hinahanap ng ecological validity. Tingnan natin yung types of validity. Meron kang 3 types of validity in research. The first one is internal validity, making sure that the cause-effect relationship identified in the study is really there and there are no other explanations for the result. Pag sinabi mong internal validity, valid ba talaga yung naging test mo? Excuse me. Tinawag siyang internal validity dahil chine-check talaga yung validity ng cause and effect relationship ng variables mo in your test. Okay? Kaya internal validity sa test mo mismo, sa naging experiment mo mismo, valid ba yung naging cause and effect ng relationship na yan? No? Yung caffeine and test scores, meron ba talagang relationship? Yung result mo ba ay dahil talaga sa relationship nila or wala bang ibang factors? That's internal validity, okay? So, yan yung internal validity. Pag sinabi mong external validity, the results you get from the sample of participants in your study are true of people outside of your experiment as well. Okay? Kung naging valid ba, ito, kung meron ng effect, kung meron ng effect yung pagtitake ng caffeine to the test scores of your students, pag pinagawa ba ito sa London, pag pinagawa ba ito sa Manila, pag pinagawa ba ito sa Afghanistan, valid pa rin kaya? Meron pa rin kayang relationship between the kape and the test scores? So that would be external validity. The results you got from your sample would still be true to people who are outside of the experiment as well. Okay? So yan yung external validity. Outside of your study na siya. Okay? In other parts of the world, pwede. Or, ang ating third type, this is your answer, ecological validity. Results have meaning in the real lives of everyday people. Meron bang meaning itong results mo to the real lives of real people every day? Kaya ito yung hinahanap natin. Sabi kanina, the experiment was so strange, very unique, na wala siyang application in real life. Okay? Wala siyang application in real world. And so, mababa ang kanyang ecological validity. Okay, move on na tayo. Ligwak, pero ganun talaga yung buhay, no? Life is life. We move on. All right, number 11. A researcher performed a study in which she concluded that children who have parents who read to them at home have better reading skills at school. However, she only included children in the top reading level at school and no children who have trouble reading. Because she only included one group and not all groups of children, her study probably has a low level of, is it letter A, external validity? Letter B, internal validity. Letter C, ecological validity, or letter D, reliability? Sino yan? Facebook user, nagmamaoy ang baby, hindi makasabay. Balikan nyo na lamang po later. May hugot, Sir Nino. Third party, external validity. Okay, letter A, letter B, may D. May sumasagot ng letter D. Okay, A, B, D. Ano kaya ang ating choice? Alright, now going back to the different types of validity in your research, again, meron kang internal validity. Yung internal validity, chine-check yung relationship between your two variables in your study. Based mismo sa study mo, sakto ba yung naging study mo? Valid ba yung naging study mo? Effective ba yung naging study mo? May relationship ba talaga yung independent variable and your dependent variable? Yung external validity mo, kung in-apply mo ba yung research na to in another part of the world, another country, for example, another area in your own country, ganun pa rin kaya yung magiging results. And of course, your ecological validity, may pakinabang ba yung naging result ng inyong research? Po pwede ba siyang gamitin, no? Dahil effective yung naging effective yung naging results ng research mo, po pwede ba itong gamitin, mai-apply in the real world? Okay? So sabi dito, meron kang researcher na nag-perform ng study na she concluded yung results ng study niya, children who have parents who read to them at home have better reading skills at school. However, she only included children in the top reading level at school and no children who have trouble reading because she only included one group and not all groups of children. Her study probably has a low level of, the correct choice here would be external validity. Hindi lahat ng grupo ng kids ay kanyang in-include sa kanyang study. Okay? Yung ginamit lamang niya are those children in the top reading level at school. So, hindi po pwedeng maging valid. Hindi valid. Maaaring valid yung kanyang research nyo, yung kanyang study, yung results ng study niya, valid. Pero if you apply that to kids with different reading levels, for example, hindi na siya magiging valid, okay? Because she has only included one group of students. And so external validity po, hindi siya internal validity. It is external validity. Okay? Hindi din siya reliability. Remember, kung reliability ito, dapat parehas yung kanyang naging test, no? Yung kanyang estudyante, yung kanyang naging subject, parehas. Okay? So letter A po, yung hinahanap natin dito. Maraming nag-B, marami ding nag-D, pero yung tamang choice natin is external validity. It did not include all groups of children. Okay? So maaring hindi siya effective, hindi maging ganun din yung results pag ginawa na niya sa ibang klase ng children, ibang klase ng kids. Okay? So that's external validity. Number 12. Which one of the following coefficients indicates that the two variables of interest move in opposite directions while remaining within the possible range of correct calculations? Is it letter A, plus 450, letter B, negative 278, letter C, negative 0.83, or letter D, positive 0.32? Alam na alam nyo to kung gumawa talaga kayo ng thesis nyo, nag-participate kayo sa thesis nyo, pumunta kayo sa inyong statistician, for example, or kayo yung gumawa ng stats nyo, alam na alam nyo to dapat. We are looking for a coefficient that indicates that the two variables move in opposite direction while remaining within the possible range of correct calculations. Easy. Kompleto tayo ngayon. A, B, C, D. Okay, they move in opposite directions while remaining within the possible range of correct calculations. Okay, now the correct choice here is letter C, negative 0.83. Okay, negative 0.83. Okay, let's go to your explanation. Now you have the term correlation here. This is a simple stats that explains whether there's a relationship or association between any any two variables. Okay, that's your correlation. Correlation. Meron bang relationship between these two variables? Okay. Now, you usually use your scatter plot. No? Yung scatter plot, ito yung type of graph na ginagamit natin for your correlation. It shows a dot for each person of interest. Kada tao doon ay dot, represented by a dot. Each dot represents one person's scores on the two variables of interest. So ginagamit again as a graph in your correlation would be a scatter plot. Now, you'd always have a correlation coefficient. This is the resulting stats you get from a correlation equation. So this here, for example, is your correlation coefficient, okay? Represented by the small letter R. This is just an example, okay? Example lang siya ng results of your correlation coefficient. Now, in your correlation coefficient, you'd always have a sign. It's either positive or negative. And a number, the number should be from 0 to 1. Okay, dapat yung number would be from 0 to 1. So again, in your correlation coefficient, you should have a sign, po pwedeng positive or negative. And of course, 0 to 1 yung magiging number. Okay? Now, whenever you have a positive relation, pag positive yung sign, okay, pag positive yung sign in your correlation coefficient, that means both variables move in the same direction. In other terms, in other words, it means that when one goes up, the other goes up, or vice versa. When one goes down, the other goes one. Okay, so goes down too. So again, that's positive correlation. Positive correlation yan. In a graph, if you are looking at a graph, if you are given a graph by your let, no, pag binigyan ka ng graph ng let mo, at the graph, the graph looks like this. It is a diagonal line pointing towards the right. Now, it's going up na diagonal line mo. This would be positive correlation. Positive correlation po ito. That means there is a relationship between your two variables and it is positive. It is directly proportional. No? So if one goes up, the other one goes up. That's your direct proportion. That is your positive correlation. Now, yung negative correlation mo, this is when two variables move in the opposite direction. As one goes up, the other goes down. So, ito yung hinahanap natin kanina kasi sabi opposite. They're moving in the opposite direction. So, dapat negative yung sign ng inyong number, ng inyong correlation. Okay? So, if you are looking at a graph, ito yung magiging itsura niya. It's still a diagonal line. Diagonal line siya, pero it is pointing downwards. That's negative correlation. So, negative correlation po siya. Now, you also, of course, aside from the sign, positive or negative, you also have the number. This is the strength of the association between the two variables of interest. The number should be from 0 to 1, and the relationship becomes stronger as you move from 0 to 1. Pag 0, walang relationship yung dalawa. Okay, so there's no relationship between your variables. As you move closer to 1, the relationship becomes stronger. Okay, now this right here is your a graph that shows no relationship between your two variables. And so sa scatter plot mo, super scattered ng inyong points, super scattered ng results ng persons of interest mo. So hindi ka makakapagawa ng line, no? Kasi scattered siya. Now, as the relationship becomes stronger, these dots would merge. These dots would come together until such time na po pwede kang makagawa ng linya. Pag positive yung correlation nila, it's diagonal line pointing upwards. If negative yung correlation nila, then it is a diagonal line pointing downward. Sabi kasi dito, indicates that the two variables move in opposite. Okay, in opposite relation or opposite direction. And so we are looking for negative sign. So X na itong A mo, X na din itong D mo dahil positive yung sign nila. If it's positive, they are moving towards the same direction. While remaining within the possible range of correct calculations, we cannot choose letter B because remember, it should only be from 0 to 1. Okay, 0 to 1. Ito ay 2.78. 78, more than 1 na siya. So, ito yung letter C lamang yung ating choice dito. Okay, so letter C po, ang ating choice for number 12. Alright, going back to number 13. Sana klaro na. Balikan nyo lamang ito mamaya, no? I will be sharing the slides. Jose wants to calculate a correlation. Which of the following graphs should he use? Okay, ito, bonus na to. Pie chart, line graph, Scatter plot or histogram? Alam nyo na to. Letter C. Letter C. Letter C. Okay, wag na nating patagalin pa. Of course, it's scatter plot. Letter C is a correct choice here. No, it is used to show correlations. Your pie chart is a type of graph that shows the relationship of a part to the whole. Okay? So usually yung pie chart mo, meron kang iba-iba. Meron kang circle, dinivide sa different parts, and of course, may percentage kada part, no? So relationship of a part to the whole, that would be your pie chart. Your line graph is a type of graph, the type of graph that has dots. And of course, you connect those dots using a line. It shows the trends, okay? It shows changes over time. Your histogram is a type of bar graph. It is a type of bar graph with the bars na, yung bars sa inyong histogram ay naka-attach, no? Walang spaces between your bars. It is just a type of bar graph. Okay, that's your histogram. And of course, whenever you use your histogram, your bar graph, use that when you have different choices, different genre of music, for example, different types of movie, different TV shows, for example, different types of songs. Okay, so histogram or bar graph po pwede mo gamitin. But of course, for correlation, you use your scatter plot. Okay, so letter C po ang ating tamang choice. Tama po yan. Okay, number 14, a teacher wants to compare the reading comprehension skills of children with learning disabilities and children without learning disabilities. Which statistical test should she use to make this comparison? Is it letter A, regression, letter B, p-test, letter C, t-test, or letter D, analysis of variance? What's your answer? Letter D. All right, so again, you have the different choices here. A teacher wants to compare the reading comprehension skills of children with learning disabilities and children without learning disabilities. Which stats test should she use to make this comparison? Is it letter A, regression? Okay, is it letter A, regression? Letter B, p-test? Letter C, t-test? Or letter D, ANOVA, analysis of variance? Okay, now karamihang sagot ninyo ay ANOVA, letter D. Ano ba? Ligwak na naman kayo, no? Yung correct choice natin dito ay letter C, t-test. Bakit t-test? Bakit hindi ANOVA? Okay, ito lang naman yung pinaka-common dito. Yung regression po is when you are trying to check which one has the greater pressure, no, the greater effect sa inyong variable. Okay, so that's your regression. But we are not looking for regression here. Yung ating pong sagot dito ay letter C, t-test. Okay, naligwak na naman yung mga nag-choose ng letter D, ANOVA. All right, now, your inferential statistics is a branch of statistics that analyzes data that allow the researcher to make conclusions about whether a hypothesis was supported by the results or not. Okay, so these are the different stats that you use to check whether your hypothesis is supported or not. Pati pa rin siya ng research mo, no? Now, you can use a t-test to compare the average scores between two different groups in a study to see if the groups are different from each other. Okay, so t-test. T-test po yung ginagamit natin kung meron lamang tayong dalawang grupo. And your ANOVA, analysis of variance, ito ay ginagamit if you have 3 or more different groups in a study to see if the groups are different from each other. Now, going back to the question that we had, dalawa lamang po yung group niya, no? Those people or those students with learning disabilities and those students without learning disability. And so, since dalawa lamang yung group niya, t-test po yung gagamitin, hindi po ANOVA. Okay? Ano ba yan? Okay? Ano ba si ANOVA? Now, yung p-value mo naman, this is the likelihood that the results in a study would have happened simply by random chance. Okay? So that's the p-value. The range of your p-value should be from 0 to 1. Okay, so 0, that means 0% chance that the results happened randomly. Ang 1 mo naman, there's a 100% chance that the results happened randomly. Okay, so yan yung p-value mo. So usually, we should have the acceptable maximum for your p-test would be 5%. Okay, so 5% chance that the scores were random. That means your acceptable value for p-value would be from 0.00 to 0.05. Okay, so kung naging value mo ay 0.06, may mali na sa inyong research. Okay, that means it happened, the results of your test happened by chance. Hindi siya because of your independent variable. Okay, so that's your p-value. Okay, so yung ating tamang sagot doon, no, yung sagot natin would be t-test. T-test po yung ating hinahanap. Okay, 15. A teacher wants to compare children of high, medium, and low family incomes and their satisfaction with the school lunch program. Which stats test should be used to make this comparison? Is it letter A, regression, letter B, analysis of variance, ANOVA, letter C, p-test, or letter D, t-test? Okay, ano kaya yung tamang choice dito for this question? Number 15. Okay, a lot of people are saying letter B, ANOVA. Baka maging ANOVA na naman Ano ba? Ligwak, ganun na naman. Kailangan na naman mag-move on. Ano ba? Okay, karamihang choice nyo ay letter B, ANOVA. And that is correct, okay? Again, as you can see, yung ANOVA po ay ginagamit kapag ka meron kang 3 or more different averages, okay? So 3 or more different groups, okay? So in this case here, may high, medium, and low. Those are 3 groups. And so ANOVA po yung ating gagamitin, hindi po t-test. T-test is only for 2 groups, okay? So letter B po yung ating hinahanap. Yung p-test po would be done after your t-test or after your ANOVA. Okay, so here, ANOVA po yung ating gagamitin. Okay, so letter B is the correct choice. We move on, number 16. On which of the following cases would an analysis of variance, ANOVA, be useful? Okay, so parehas lamang siya sa 15. Binaliktad siya, no? You are given the different situations and you will be choosing the situation. Saan yung sitwasyon dito po pwedeng gumamit ng ANOVA? Is it letter A, testing whether girls enjoyed hearing a certain story read aloud? Letter B, finding the average score of a group in a Spanish test. Letter C, testing whether children in Iowa, California, and New York have different learning skills. Or letter D, comparing the language acquisition skills of 2 different groups. Okay, which one is the correct choice for 16? We are looking for a situation where we can use ANOVA. All right, the correct choice, of course, would be letter C, testing whether children in Iowa, California, and New York have different learning skills. Remember, use your ANOVA if you have 3 or more groups, okay? You have 3 or more groups, you would be using ANOVA. And so here you have Iowan children, Californian, and New Yorkers, okay? So tatlong grupo, you will be using ANOVA. Tama po yan. Ito, isang group, letter D mo, 2 groups, okay? So this would be a t-test here. Number 17, a researcher asks a group of students to complete a survey that measures maturity. She finds that the average score for girls is higher than the average score for boys, with a p-value of 0.03. What should she conclude from this p-value? Is it letter A? There's a 93% chance that the scores in the study are due to random chance. Letter B, there's a 3% chance that the scores in the study are due to random chance. Letter C, 3% of the girls are more mature than the boys on average. Letter D, 93% of the girls are more mature than the boys on average. What's your answer for 17? Okay, I see a lot of letter C's. A lot of ligwalkers kaya? Or a lot of tamaers? Okay, going back to the question that we have here, she finds that the average score for girls is higher than the average score for boys. Again, if you are comparing, makinig, no? If you are comparing the average score of girls to boys, you will be using t-test, di ba? Gagamitan mo siya ng t-test because you are comparing the results of two groups. Okay? Pag tatlong groups or more than 3, then you will be using your ANOVA. Pagkatapos mong makakuha ng inyong t-test results or your ANOVA results, you use your p-value. Okay? So here, p-value yung ating hinahanap, no? P-value of 0.03. Remember, ayan, may change to be, sir Nap, change to be. Remember, pag sinabi mong p-value, ano yung chance that the results happened randomly? Okay? So again, yung acceptable value lamang natin for p-value would be from 0.00 to 0.05. Hindi siya dapat maging higher than 5% chance that the results happened randomly. So we cannot choose letter C dahil yung letter C dito, it's still comparing your two groups. This is t-test. Hindi siya p-value. Yung p-value would just be the chance, no? Chine-check na niya yung results ng inyong t-test. Okay, and so the correct choice here would be letter B. There's a 3% chance that the scores in the study are due to random chance. That's the score of the girls. Okay, the score of the girls. Okay, so hindi po yung letter C kasi letter C mo, kino-compare niya pa yung two groups, that will be the t-test. Hindi pa siya p-value. Okay, your p-value is checking how random your results are. Okay, so letter B po ang ating choice, hindi po letter C. Ayan, Sir Nino, letter B din. Move on ka agad. All right, 18. Which of the terms below refers to a piece of paper that explains to you in detail everything that will happen in a research study before it begins? Is it letter A, IRB, review form? Letter B, confidentiality form? Letter C, deception form? Or letter D, informed consent form? It is a piece of paper that explains to you in detail everything that will happen in a research study before it begins. Okay, so say you will be one of the subjects in a research. Before the research is done, you received a piece of paper explaining to you in detail everything that will happen. Okay, so this is what we are going to do in this research. Thank you so much for becoming a part of this research, of this study. These are the things that we are going to do, okay, in this research before it even happens. All right, number 18, going back to number 18 here, the correct choice would be letter D. Tama yung letter D, informed consent form. Explains everything in detail, everything before it even happens. Yung IRB review form mo, IRB is Institutional Review Board, no? Or sometimes International Review Board. Ito yung ginagamit nila before they tell you that you can already go on with your study, go on with your research, no? Sa titingnan muna nila po pwede ba yung study na to or hindi. Okay? So that would be letter A. Confidentiality form, you are telling your subjects that their identities would remain confidential. You will not be divulging, no, you are not going to tell people that they were part of this study. Deception form, your deception, of course, you can only do this if it is necessary. Hindi po pwedeng dinideceive mo yung subjects mo in a study. Dapat may informed consent sila. Dapat alam nila na pati sila ng research, dapat alam nila kung ano yung gagawin sa research. Okay? Oo, yun. Yung D, kasi binigay namin ng thesis namin, sabi ni Facebook user, tapos pipirmahan nila. Dapat may consent. Okay? Dapat may consent. Inform, you explain. Okay? So letter D is the correct choice. 19, if a lab rat is conditioned to push a feeder bar for a food pellet after seeing a candy apple red light flash in its cage, according to the principles of stimulus generalization, the rat would likely also push the feeder bar following the flash of a blank light. Is it letter A, maroon, letter B, blue, letter C, black, or letter D, yellow? Okay. Ano kaya yung best choice for number 19? Okay, going back to the question that we have here, there's A, there's B. Karamihang sagot ay letter A. So again, meron kang isang lab rat. Okay, so meron kang ginagamit na rat sa lab. And every time the rat sees a candy apple red light flash in its cage, okay? So yung kulay ng light is candy apple red. Okay, so candy apple red. Every time that the rat would see that color of light, the rat would push the feeder bar para makakuha siya ng food pellet. Okay? Now, your question is asking about or talking about stimulus generalization. Stimulus generalization. If your rat has already formed generalization based on the different stimulus or stimuli that it has. Okay, now what likely the rat would likely also push the feeder bar with which kind of light? Is it letter A maroon, letter B blue, letter C black, letter D yellow? The correct choice of course would be letter A maroon kasi siya yung pinakamalapit sa candy apple red. Okay? Candy apple red. Parang ano nga yan? Watermelon sugar, okay? Candy apple red po yung light na ginagamit para i-push niya yung feeder bar. Now, sabi ng stimulus generalization, pag merong stimulus, if there is another stimulus that is very similar to that conditioned stimulus, then the rat is going to do the same action, okay? The response of the rat would be the same. And so, yung pinakamalapit nito sa candy apple red is maroon. Kaya yung maroon po yung ating choice. Hindi blue, hindi black, hindi yellow. Okay? Yung pinakamalapit po, yung similar stimulus yung hinahanap natin. And so letter A, yung tamang choice for number 19. Klaro? Okay na tayo? 20. Before we go to number 20, again, when you say stimulus generalization, this was part of Pavlov's, no? When a previously unassociated or new stimulus has similar characteristics to the previously associated stimulus elicits a response that is the same or similar to the previously associated response. Okay? So, any shades of red, tama yan, and paghid. Okay? Now, it eliminates the need to learn how to respond or react to every stimulus that we encounter. Kaya helpful, kaya useful yung stimulus generalization mo because every time you see this stimulus or every time that you see similar stimulus, you already know how to react. Okay, alam mo na kung paano ka magre-react pag may nakita kang ganito, that stimulus generalization. Kaya siya helpful din. Now, i-stress ko lamang that stimulus generalization is both found not just in classical conditioning by Pavlov, but also found in operant conditioning by B.F. Skinner. Meron din siyang stimulus generalization doon. Okay, so this here is an example. So every time the child would see the potty, the child would already knows how to react to that. Okay? So, say, pinapati training mo yung child, no? So, every time she sees the potty, alam niya na kung anong magiging reaction niya. Aakyat na siya, magpupoops na siya, no? So, kahit tayo, whenever we see the traffic lights, at nakita natin yung iba't ibang kulay ng traffic lights, every time we see orange, for example, and red, we already know how to react. Okay, that's the reason why stimulus generalization is very important. We already know how to respond, how to react to a certain type of stimulus. Okay, 20. The major advantage of stimulus generalization is that, I've just mentioned this, our brains can overgeneralize and therefore make incorrect responses. Letter B, stimulus generalization is not advantageous at all. Letter C, our brains do not have to relearn how to respond to every new situation we encounter. Or letter D, stimulus generalization does not require a reward or punishment to allow for conditioning to occur. Okay, 20. I have just mentioned number 20. Low road transfer na ito, no? Sinabi ko na to. I have just explained number 20 a while ago. Just a few seconds ago, no? Sana hindi nyo nakalimutan. Kung ang ex nyo nga, ang tagal na, hindi pa rin ninyo nakakalimutan. Ito pa kaya? Kaka-mention ko lang po. Okay, number 20, C, and that is correct. Okay, our brains do not have to relearn how to respond to every new situation it encounters. Pag meron kang situation na halos kaparehas ng napagdaanan mong sitwasyon, alam mo na kung ano yung magiging reaction mo. Kaya, importante yung stimulus generalization.